Guys, off to the races. Here we are, guys. It's off to the races. It's Tuesday night. Always kind of special in its own way. Sort of, it's our own funny way of starting the week. And anyway, the other guys will be showing up in a little while. I'm expecting Eric, Rick, and Jason. And boy, oh boy, we got some stuff tonight. Oh my goodness. I would hope that more people be around for this because this is going to be finger licking good. I know it's going to be. So let's look at the title and give you a hint. Mandami is goo, Iranian stew. Fauci is through, the deep state stew, and Mars too. Oh yeah, that's right. I got to put up that Mars thing. Oh God, darn it. All right, maybe we'll do it in the middle of the talk. So spoiler alert. There is a photo from Mars for the Curiosity rover that has got people abuzz because they're saying, boy, oh boy, does that look unusual. It looks like something that was intentionally designed by somebody, not just some chunk of rock sticking out from someplace. You know, since I'm on the subject of Mars, there is quite a bit of stuff that people have seen. And of course, there is this problem. When you see these pictures for Mars, they have there looks like a cave to entrance to a cave. Then there's something else. Boy, you could swear that looks like the head of a statue. And then you see these other parts that they're geometric shape. You know, boy, that looks like the remnants of some kind of building or temple or something. All that supposedly sitting on the surface of Mars. And NASA doesn't want to touch it. This is an odd situation, by the way. I'm going to just digress on this one for a moment. Let's deal with this, all right? Here you have growing pressure for the federal government to spill the beans on UFOs and UAPs, all right? And there seems to be a sentiment, right? We've had this testimony. We've had government officials actually come forth and say, yes, we've got, what would we call them? Extraterrestrial bio entities that we got from crash. Yeah, we have them. So they've made this open admission. And I don't know why people haven't been jumping up and down more, but if you take that information at face value, yes, life forms from other places. Maybe there is the other theory of, ancient human-like civilizations that kind of shrank back, but are still somehow here on the planet. There's that idea too. In any event, so you have that whole discussion going on, right? So while the federal government is trying to open up about what's happening here on Earth and with respect to UFOs, they're still tight-lipped about what they're finding on Mars. So I think we have to complete the circle here, guys, and start fessing up about these things that you see on Mars. And it's a dirty trick, by the way, right? Because the photos, they're grainy. They're black and white. They're hard to make out. They seem to be from a distance. Anything but using all the advanced technology that we have, technology where we're supposed to be able to read a license plate from 100 miles up, and they can't use that technology for these images we have from Mars. I don't know. Makes me a little suspicious. Just saying. Or it arouses the conspiracy theorist in me. So, so we'll get into that. While we're talking, when they get on, I'll have to go and get that picture. I sent it to Jason and others earlier. So in the meantime, where do I want to start? Well, we're going to get into it. Might as well get into it now. Should I try and pull it up? I'm going to pull up the pull quote. Okay, let's try that. See if I can do that. Here it is. Good. All right. So please pay attention to the pull quote. Mandami may well be a fraudulent mayor. So all right, let's go through it. The problem all right, so it's a group. It's, I'm going to pull up the article, we'll get the rest of the information, but this researcher pulled together, they examined right here, after examining 1 million of the total 2.2 million voters in the election for Mandami, they found, 7% were non-existent records. What? Wait a second. How? What? Huh? How can that be? How can you have names of people who are non-existent who voted? Well, I don't know. Maybe if you don't have voter ID, that might happen. Just a thought. 6% had fake Social Security numbers. Those would usually be illegal aliens, ladies and gentlemen. And then 10% didn't even live in New York City. Look, we need to make a stink about this. All right, a loud stink, a stink every day. The responsible parties are right here, the New York City and New York State boards of elections. They're the ones who let this scandal pass through. They're the ones who didn't do a proper job. Okay, Eric is here. Let's get Eric in on this now. Ah, boy. Okay, so by way of introduction, I was talking about the article I sent out about Mandami. Did you get a chance to read that at all?
No.
Oh. I know what it's like to be a teacher, okay? Because I send my students homework and they never do the homework.
Well, right. But if your students are attending other schools, I mean, that's also a problem.
All you got is pop open the link. I need to make representations about how easy and short this stuff is. So here we are. I don't know if I think you're able to read this. So this is a bombshell article. Here, I'm going to take this out for the moment. All right, let's go and get the other thing in here.
Problem uncovers in New York City State Board of Education have no idea if Mandami won the mayoral election. Examining 1.2 voters.
Yeah, it's okay. It's insane.
Yeah, will anything be done about it?
Yeah, only if we make noise. Only if we make noise. Okay, and we have the ability to do that. All right, so there's the title of the article. More fraudulent votes cast in the margin of Mandami's, quote, victory, says election auditor. Her name is Marley Hornick.
Right.
She's the founder of realamerica.vote and New York Citizens Audit. And she probably knows Linda Sinkowitz very well. Okay. So they have looked at nearly half of the votes. Apparently, I mean, I can't even imagine how you would go through 1 million individual votes one by one to make this determination, but they did it. And so just to read the quote, I actually don't know whether Mandami won the mayoral election, and I'm not here to say that he didn't, Hornick said during the July 22nd interview. The problem we uncovered is that New York City and New York State boards of education have no idea if Mandami won the mayoral election either. Okay.
Shocker. Shocker.
Yeah. Yes, we have seen this kind of stuff numerous times. So here we go again. Here we go again. Okay. So how about a quote? How about a press release from our friends at the New York State and New York City boards of election, and give us some clue as to how they regard this information. And of course, the part that's really annoying is it took an independent investigator to do this work that they wouldn't do. Okay. Unpaid volunteers doing the work of paid government officials. It is so pathetic, and we see this over and over and over again. Talk about something has to change.
Right.
That's for sure. Okay, so when Jason hops on here, whenever Ricky gets here, we'll have to go over this again. But so the key part here is that based upon, if I'm reading this article correctly, based on having just looked at nearly half of the votes, they identified 230,000 illegal votes, while Mandami's margin of victory was 207,000 votes. So they identified more illegal votes than his margin of victory. I think it's time to have a serious look, don't you?
Sure.
Yeah. I know, sure. But yeah, so I'm going to say it again, and I'm going to keep repeating myself. We have to make noise about this. And the other problem here is, let's go back to those. That was on the next page here, I think. Yeah. Okay. So where did she put those statistics again? Where did they go? So the point is that the percent breakdown. All right. I want to just focus on the last one. That 10% of the votes were people who didn't even live in New York City. Let's stop right there. Okay. So 10% of a million is 100,000. 100,000 votes cast, said to be, I mean, they were let in, they were allowed to vote somewhere, somehow. I would love to know which polling places this happened in. Yet, there's no evidence they live in New York City. Okay, so this is what you get when you don't have voter ID. Okay, you even have people who come in who are not even in the voting district who are fouling up the election. And so I don't know, this is an echo, pass the Save America Act. Senator Thune, get your act together, get off your North Dakota ass and get this taken care of, because stuff like this is what destroys trust in elections, trust in so-called elected officials, and trust in this company. You cannot have this. You cannot have this. Anyway. All right. So we're going to wait, and nobody else has shown up yet. So
let's, a couple of things. I sent you some things that I thought would be interesting to cover.
Yeah, let's remind me, because I know I looked at least one of them.
Here, let me just go back. Here, I just bring it up. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
I can't.
See if I can find it here. Now.
I got to change the settings on this.
Yeah, what's the matter?
God forgive me. I keep thinking that I have hot corners on my computer, so that when I slide the cursor to one like hot corner, it like locks the screen, and then I end up I keep pushing the cursor into that corner. I change the corners thinking that, I never go down to that corner, but it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so a couple of things. So you have
all right, so
the intelligence operation, the yoga thing.
Yeah, I didn't watch that one, but I watched the one about Europeans visiting American high school. It's just like,
that was kind of cool. I thought that would be something worth commentating on. And then the other thing would be
this thing about Connecticut becomes ground zero for Fox News National.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
Are you talking about the flock cameras here?
Well, I mean, just surveillance. I mean, I'm just going to start calling them surveillance cameras. I mean, Flock is just one of many companies that is selling contracts to municipalities and cities, towns, and so forth, and states. It's just one of many companies that's doing it. And so there's been I think people are alert and enough and aware of it now.
Yes.
I mean, you go in the comments in the Facebook sections and stuff, and you see, the news stories about this guy was arrested, that guy was arrested, a group of people arrested for, either destroying or defacing these surveillance cameras and so forth. And most of the comments, they're like, yes, doing the Lord's work, and
absolutely
not all heroes wear capes, etc., etc.
But a lot of people are not getting caught.
Well, right. So I think the people that are getting caught are probably not going about it in a very intelligent manner, because part of the problem is that if you unless you take put your phone in a Faraday bag, your phone is basically telling on your location at all times. Mm-hmm. And so what they can do is, with the geofencing, they can do I don't know exactly how it works, but I understand that they can do they can canvass an area to see which MAC IP addresses were in a given area at a given time. And then they can narrow it down from there. And then, of course, they have.
This is outrageous.
Well, there's the other sort of fly in the ointment with all of this is all of the Ring doorbell cameras that people have in their neighborhoods, which can also, I mean, if they're close enough to the road or the street or at the right angle, can read license plates and so forth. And so there's that component to it as well. But it's encouraging to see that enough people are vehemently opposed to the installation of these surveillance cameras. And
You mean installation?
that's what I said, installation of these surveillance cameras.
Kind of sound like insulation, but regardless, 23 states is what I heard so far where these cameras have been attacked, destroyed. So that's half of the states in the nation. So, all right, we'll call that a start.
Yep.
Right. But then, yes, I think we touched on this other thing too, which is, what was it? Flock drones.
Right.
And we know that they're surveillance drones, but the problem is that apparently the sophistication of these surveillance drones is increasing. And I guess the patriots who are going to fight this have to figure out what their countermeasures are going to be in those.
I mean, it's not enough that we're getting taxed, levied, and feed to death, or that the cost of fuel and energy and the rest of it is untenable. But now we have, and then of course the ideological warfare that's ensued. It's just like, I mean, this is kind of what I would refer to of floods of ungodly men. It's like we're being drowned with chaos from every side. Everything and anything that is antithetical.
You mean tyranny?
Yeah, anything and everything that is antithetical to our way of life is under assault. And there's I think more and more people are realizing that they can ill afford to sit on their hands any longer about stuff.
Correct.
Look, you and I have been at this. I mean, I've been at it intermittently most of my life, but because I've seen the writing on the wall. Gosh, as early as 1985 or 86, I began seeing that things that our government were doing were just this, and this was something that my religious teacher was pointing out at the time. And she would get these copies of, I can't remember the name of the group, but they were kind of a watchdog operation, grassroots, and they were reporting on things that the Supreme Court was looking at, and the whole safety stuff and this incremental push towards safety and all this sort of thing. So, going back 30, 40 years, I mean, I've seen all this stuff just sort of metastasizing throughout the decades. And then by the time I think I was in my senior year of college, I could see that both political parties were, this is why I supported Ross Perot, because he was, I mean, I think, was it Ricky, DJ Rick? He thinks that, I think was it him or was it somebody else? But he was a plant or whatever. I mean, it's like, you can go down an infinite number of rabbit holes.
Well,
and
Ricky,
just be,
everybody.
well, like rabbit holes in terms of conspiracy theories. And then all that does is just leads to nihilism. You don't believe anything, no matter what it is. And so I think this is all of this seems very intentional, getting people confused, so confused that they don't know which way is up. And it all seems very, quite deliberate. But I think one of the things that helps, at least for me, is and I've read books or at least that book, Viktor Frankl, the meaning of the meaning of life, not the meaning of life,
Search
but
for meaning.
Yeah. So one of the caveats of that book was that they would hold on to anything that they could, some kind of nugget of truth, no matter what it was, to 2 + 2 is 4, something that was, metaphysical or ontological, something that didn't require, you engaging in a conversation with another person, but something that you knew to be true
Yeah,
or
but
absolute.
I think though the other realization that came out of that book was they can do anything to you, but they're not going to take your mind and they're not going to take your soul.
Well, and to that point, it seems like even with this is one of the things I'm kind of out of sorts with Elon Musk about the integration of human biology with technology and this sort of thing. I think
No, that's not his fault.
the chip to interface with the human body and all this sort of thing. Well, right, but I mean, if you're advocating for it and you have the amount of influence that you do over public thinking, or the way the public thinks about and looks at certain things, it's setting again a dangerous precedent. I mean, which is kind of ironic because he kind of talks out of both sides of his mouth. On the one hand, he talks about how great, um, the advances in technology and becoming an interplanetary, species and this kind of thing, and all of these all these limitations that are being overcome, I think are all well and good. And to me, it just kind of serves it serves a higher purpose with respect to growing out. To me, it's like a phase of growing out of materialism, and I'll just kind of leave.
Really?
Yeah,
You
but
think
I don't want to go
he's
off on that
materialism?
tangent. But my
Wait,
point about Musk and his contradicting himself, I want to stay with that because I don't. We could go off down a variety of
well,
different
you
rabbit
just
holes with
made a
that.
very peculiar assertion. We will have to come back to it.
Well, eventually, but I guess what I want to stick with is what I perceive as blatant hypocrisy on his part. Now, I don't know if it's intentional or if it's just a symptom of, I guess, what I could only describe as a spiritual ignorance on his part, because then he talks about wanting to integrate technology with human biology and all this sort of thing, and then the deification of his technology to a point where it purportedly will become more intelligent than humans. And this is kind of one of the major things I take issue with, because if man is made in the image and likeness of God, which is what it says in Scripture, Genesis 1, verse 26 and 27, that sort of his statements about this the thing to which we have invented, and ascribing to it a uh, a category, that I can only surmise is like a deification of technology, because he's saying that it will be able to become smarter than we are. I don't know what his metrics for in terms of what he gauges as smart and what all of the et ceteras that includes. I would actually like to pick his brain on that.
Well, I don't associate intelligence with divinity.
Well, sure. Boy, well, actually, it's a peculiar question. So then what is your metric for intelligence?
I just know I'm saying there's no connection between the two, so there is no metric for divinity to apply to intelligence.
Well, I would say that, well, if God is all knowing and knows all, and man is the image and likeness of God, then divinity is very much attributed to, or intelligence is very, very much an attribute of the divine nature or the divine. So this,
Okay,
which
but
brings,
we're still stuck with the other problem, though. At no point in time would we ever find any reason to believe that anything that is a product of artificial intelligence could ever be associated with real
okay, there
intelligence,
we go. So
outperform
yeah, right.
real intelligence, and I'm still stuck in the same place.
Well,
Which
yeah, because it to me, it's just comes back to the dog chasing its tail. And then, like, we all of these things that are surfacing now with AI, these like artifacts, and uh, you know with having to have, like, you come up with an idea and it manifests this idea in the form of an image or a rendering or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at it, you critique it, and then you can see where there's disparities in terms of symmetry, or um, some things are not equidistant or proportionally right. And so with even with all of these things, I mean, and I've seen some movies that have been made by AI. I mean, I can tell
Mm-hmm.
there's a quality. There's a certain quality to things that AI builds or makes, that is very much, it's two-dimensional. It's very hard to put into words. There's no depth to it at all.
Well, what I'll help you out with is that we're still waiting for proof that AI can produce, quote, new knowledge. And we have to be clear about what I mean when I say new knowledge. It's one thing to recombine existing knowledge in novel combinations, but it's another thing to come up with an idea or concept that previously did not exist or was not a part of human knowledge.
Well, I guess, that's something I would like to sort of drill down on.
So
because
drill away.
So so if again, I mean, at the risk of being a Bible thumper here, there's another passage in Scripture, and I can't remember the chapter and verse, but it says there's nothing new under the sun. So
that's not true.
Just like bear with me for a second here. I mean, humans seem to go through a repetition or cycles of growth, birth, maturity, or let's see, birth, growth, maturity, decay, and death. And so those seems to be the phases of the human existence. And throughout the course of that existence, people have tendencies towards very much a lot of the same things. I mean, the props have changed, like, over the centuries and over several thousand years, but human nature by and large is still inclined to, I guess, for lack of a better word, materialism. Things that it can control, manipulate, acquisition of things, exchange of things.
All right. Well, I'm going to have fun with this. Do you consider?
Well, if I could just flush out my entire thought process here, and then
flush away.
There's this tendency to, and it's outlined in the 10 Commandments: not having other gods, not committing adultery, not coveting after other things and stuff. So these are all of the things that humans tend to be predisposed to. And so if that's true, if it was true, then it certainly is proven to be true now. And so when I say there's nothing, when the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun, what we're talking about is this aspect of human nature. So we've invented all of these wonderful things, these conveniences, or these things that have made our human experience a lot more convenient, comfortable, and that sort of thing. But is it moving us in a divine direction? And my answer to that is yes and no. I mean, yes, because we're overcoming limitations. In other words, all of the setbacks and the limitations of, even 100 years ago are not things that would be considered a setback for us today. And so it's kind of like the question, I think all of it, or some people are asking, where are we going with all this? Like, where is this taking us, sort of thing? And I always come back to sort of the same answer. And that answer is the dissolution. It's kind of like we're overcoming limitations to the point with which materialism will become less and less. I mean, it's kind of like there's this crescendo. So it seems like we're working up to a crescendo I guess, of what we'll call materialism, only to discover that most and all of it is just superfluous and unnecessary.
Well, I have two simple points that I need to make. How can there be nothing new under the sun? And we're somehow trending towards a more spiritual way of life. That's the first point. And then the second point is Buckminster Fuller made much of a saying where he declared that everything is moving from the physical to the metaphysical. And the way he argued this was how the way we were manipulating the material world was becoming more and more, quote, efficient. And he liked to cite as an example that all the copper that was used to send telephone communications on Earth, amounting to however many tons of copper, was outperformed by the copper in one telecommunications satellite. So that was an example of moving from the physical to the metaphysical.
Sure.
Okay.
So yeah, so it seems to be an arduous progression of overcoming, limitations where there's less and less matter involved. I think, the idea that Tesla wanted to be able to transmit electricity through the air and all the homes would have electricity, but which kind of begs it's like we can pull water out of thin air. So I can't remember what that process is called. Is it some form of hydrolysis or something like that, or dehumidification, or like a dehumidifier on steroids?
Condensation.
Right. So being able to extract condensation from the air and make your own water. So we have the technology with which to do that, and so on and so on. So, and then of course this whole concept of energy, and this is kind of the again going back to sort of the dog chasing its tail. Well, the more technologically advanced and the more materialism attenuated to that technology, the more the more energy gets consumed.
Well, the opposite would be true. We're consuming less energy. So, for example, to go back to the copper example, the amount of energy to send transmissions through copper on the Earth was far greater than the amount of energy required to send communications to a satellite.
Well, yeah, but I'm not talking about that specific paradigm. I'm talking about the consumption or the use of energy. We use, copious amounts of energy, infinitely more than we did, say 20 or 30 or 50 years ago, because we have laptops. Laptops have batteries. We have more screens.
Okay, when we talk about computers, the amount of energy consumed per unit computation in a computer has decreased over time. The amount of memory, the amount of space is taken up from memory has decreased over time. The cost of memory has decreased over time.
Okay, fine. Then how come the demand for energy has increased as our advancement in technologies have taken place? Hence the power grid, restructuring the power grid to accommodate the bigger demand. You have battery powered cars now, which create a very large demand for electricity. You have air conditioners and refrigerators, which require copious amounts of energy. You have washers and dryers that require energy. So all of our appliances and all of the things that make our life more convenient consume energy. So while we've gotten efficient at the transmission of energy, we're still consuming more energy, or we seem to need to require more energy, or the means with which to generate more energy.
So we're not experts on this subject, but I think it's fair to say if you're following all the stuff about data centers, these are requiring the creation of new utilities, modular nuclear reactors, and all this other app cray.
Sure.
And so those certainly add significantly to total energy consumption in this country. If you take that out of the picture, I think you're going to find that the increase is really driven by population. Okay, And since we're trying to get illegals out of this country, we should expect some of this stuff to go down. Just like housing costs are going to go down. Just had to throw that in there.
Well, yeah, and property value. Well, I guess what
Right.
you would the term that you would use is the market has to reset, or like it has to adjust to what the real value, I guess, or what we're calling the real value of
It's always
things.
about supply and demand. Okay,
Right.
so the balance between supply and demand will shift. If there's a
So,
in demand,
right, and so that is a paradigm that is sort of uh, indicative of things in our present state of existence, right?
indicative. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess they're indicative. Um, the again, I just want to stress that already you have on the drawing board, not on the drawing board, you have laboratory demonstrations of new chip designs that reduce power consumption in order to do the same tokens for AI. Okay, now is that new knowledge? I think it's new knowledge. If you find a way to do something more efficiently,
Sure.
that qualifies. Okay.
But like, right. So, I think if it's like it is a question of was it discovered or invented, and I think most of the things we've discovered or learned new and more efficient ways to do things through trial and error, and you know,
Well,
that sort of thing.
yeah,
So,
let's just take your good old fashioned internal combustion engine as an example. Okay, the um, the major components of that engine, the combustion part and the spark plugs, were drawn from other industries. All right. So, for example, the using of spark plugs was borrowed from photography and flash lamps.
arc lamps. Yep.
Okay. So I'm thinking if you're taking that, you have to modify it and adjust it, but it's the same basic concept of developing a spark, put into an engine. I'm calling that new knowledge.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. And then
Okay.
if we want to get an whole discussion about quantum phenomena, okay, we're just talking about quantum computing. There's a whole bunch of new knowledge there. You know, the thing, just to get into it a little bit, the concept of quantum computing didn't start until the late 90s. It was not until mathematicians were able to demonstrate conclusively that quantum computing was feasible that engineers even set about the process of trying to demonstrate quantum computing. And the early implementations were these little arrays of ion traps, 6 of them. And then they could show that, yes, you could have these what we call qubits, these quantum states, and we can extract information from them. And it just went on from there. And boy, oh boy, did it go on from there, because all kinds of wild ideas have emerged. And I don't know, discovered, invented. I'm going for both. All right.
Okay. All right.
All right. So, no, the idea that there's nothing new under the sun is just patently ridiculous. If you limit it to your earlier point about human nature, maybe so. But if it's about understanding the world around us, not even close. If anything, it's the opposite. If there's an argument, I'm in that camp. Others have started to articulate it. I'll even say J.D. Vance has articulated it. And that is the physics that we have, okay, what they call the standard model, and quantum phenomenon, okay, and the eternal argument between Einstein and Bohr, and Schrodinger's cat, dead or alive, all that cool stuff, still ends up with, what is that I want to say? Uncertainty. We don't know. So we keep asking and keep doing research, and what happens? We keep finding new things, discoveries that then set the stage for future inventions.
Well, right, but I think to the point is it's like it's something that is discovered in in the realm of in the realm of the material world. I mean, yes, it's new, but it's but it's still material. And does it help us overcome limitations to a certain extent? Sure. But my whole point, and the I guess the camp that I'm coming from, is unless it brings us closer to God or it helps us love our neighbor as ourselves, I don't really have any use for it. I mean, save like if it might make my human life a little bit more convenient, communicating via telephone, that's certainly convenient, and that's a convenient tool. So sure.
Like this one we're using right now?
Well, right. But see, Jesus was able to like traverse great distances. He was able to heal multitudes. He was able to raise the dead, all without having the need for any kind of technological advancement. So
all right.
That's the camp I want to be in.
Well, that's back to my earlier point. I do not draw a strong connection between intelligence and divinity.
Well, I think that you perhaps might need to rethink what it is you qualify, what it is you think about when you think about intelligence. Like, what is intelligence to you, and what is divinity, and what's the correlation there? I mean, I see the correlation.
All right. Well, I see no correlation. All right.
Okay. Well,
and the problem is that divinity is for lack of a term, I'm going with a state of awareness. Okay. When you are communing, all right, with the Holy Spirit, when you're attempting to commune with Jesus and God, that is a certain place that you are in. And that place, quite frankly, has nothing to do with, let me put it another way.
Well, okay, so basically what you're doing right here is you're dismissing the entire concept of intelligent design.
Not at all.
Well, absolutely you are, because you're saying that intelligence has nothing to do with divinity. And yet most of the early scientists were men of faith, and they made attributions to the things that they observed and discovered.
Okay,
and they attributed those.
But when
you're interrupting, you're interrupting.
Well, and you're making an interesting point, and that interesting point is contradictory. Intelligent design, sure, okay.
How is it contradictory?
Design of what? Material stuff in the world.
Well, no, but what they're able to do is to understand that there is something back of it. So in other words, what they see and what they observe is, instead of like, maybe guessing on what it might be, or coming from the realm of mysticism or ignorance about what it is, and then discovering what the mechanics of those things are, but also seeing the intelligence behind it. Even in this world, there's a lot of things that manifest or express intelligence that could have attributions to the divine. So all of the creatures, if God made everything, well, even if you're coming at this from a creationist point of view, which is to say that, God created everything material, and everything material sort of functions as a consequence of God, of what God created, then you would have to conclude that there is intelligence in even the very things that we see or we witness in the material world. But yet we're trying to explain them from a material perspective. And so this kind of comes back to the discussion about what is real, what is substantive. And if Jesus was able to supersede things or the material things in the material world, in other words, overcome them vis-a-vis having that sort of divine connection, communication with the divine, then that says something that it brings us into a new direction, I think, So I think everything in this material world is a manifestation, or is, I guess, probably the best way to put it is but a type and a shadow of something that is much greater. So what are the qualities, like, for example, that a tree expresses? What are the spiritual or divine qualities of all of the creatures in the earth? What do they express? They all express intelligence to some degree. So, but they're going about doing their things, and they function as a consequence of some kind of intelligence back of it. So the question always comes back to, what is intelligence? Where does it come from? And what is it that's animating everything? What is the animating force of everything? So that's where I'm making the correlation between the intelligence and divine. And I don't think you can divorce the two.
On the one hand,
in my opinion.
On the one hand, you're echoing St. Francis's prayer.
Okay.
Do you remember St. Francis's prayer?
I'm not Catholic, so no.
Well, I don't think you'd have a problem with it. So it's St. Francis standing there going, Lord, what are these eyes that I can see? What are these ears that I can hear?
Well, actually goes back. St. Francis sounds like he was kind of echoing the prophet David from the Old Testament.
Yeah, I think he was having a direct experiential issue at the moment. Okay. In other words, standing there realizing, wait, this is very weird. I see things? What is this? What is this stuff that I'm seeing? What? Wait, and I'm hearing? And I taste and I feel things? What is this? This is really weird. Okay. So I believe the nature of the prayer was direct and not an echo. Just saying. Meantime, there are two other words to introduce when we want to talk about intelligence: consciousness and information. So it becomes interesting if you suddenly start to substitute the word consciousness for intelligence.
Well, those are, I think, subsets of, one is a subset of the other, I think.
Well, that's a problem. So, for example, it's hard to talk about consciousness without including a discussion of memory. But to me, a pure concept of consciousness would be independent of memory. So, I mean, the synonym is awareness, right? And the concept, a worm is aware, bacteria are aware, all life forms in some fashion are, quote, aware. And that awareness would somehow be associated with some form of intelligence. But in the cold material world, we would like to refer to all of this as just being information.
Derived from what?
Derived? I don't know. Where is life from? I mean, we don't understand life without understanding. Am I saying this right? We don't understand life without understanding consciousness. That might be right to think about that. Again, the notion is that you have this. I need to start with some fundamental sense of awareness or consciousness, and then go from there. Okay, and yeah, it ends up being, quote, biological. But see, the notion is if you have something that's, quote, aware, that awareness is also interacting with the environment in which there are other things that are aware. If they're aware, they're communicating. If they're communicating, there's an exchange of information.
So this is kind of a breakdown of it. So consciousness is awareness. Intelligence is capability. Consciousness concerns the existence of subjective experience, the fact that something is being seen, felt, heard, thought, or experienced.
Yes, and that's subjective.
Intelligence concerns the ability to process information, learn, recognize patterns, reason, solve problems, adapt behavior. A being can therefore possess an experience without performing. So, I mean, this is kind of in the context of, I guess, what I'll call a limited framework within the human experience. So knowledge is derived, our knowledge or human knowledge is derived from the five physical senses. We've had this discussion before. And that's how we define the world, things with which we can, sensory perception, see, hear, taste, smell, and touch.
Okay, there's a problem with that. Okay.
Okay, so what is the problem with that?
Courtesy of psychology, it's what we'll call hallucination. If you take a person and put them in a sensorily, we'll go in an environment where your senses are suppressed and deprived. So dark room, no sound, wearing blindfolds, having your ears plugged, etc. Okay, so you are getting no sensory input whatsoever, and you're just sitting there. What happens is after a few days, your brain takes over and starts to generate images that would normally be associated with hallucination. So you're getting zero sensory input, but your brain or mind is doing something.
Okay.
All right. So your previous point about the importance of sensory input as a part of mind or consciousness has a little bridge to cross.
Well, I mean, you know, usually an experiment, because I guess what we're
Well, if
calling
you want to put
it controlled environment. Like how or why does the mind hallucinate? Like, and when we're talking about if it's if the senses are deprived of sensory input, you know, and this kind of brings me back to the idea. I mean, because the senses can lie to us too. I mean, we can be deceived. If you look at an illusionist or a magician up on stage, everything that he does is, you know, based on some form of misdirection and so forth. So can a person be misled to believe that something is real when it's not actually real or not actually happening? Yes, we see that through the medium of propaganda. We see that through the medium of, again, the aforementioned magicians and illusionists. We see that in many other instances, like the mirage in the desert and so forth. So your senses can be deceived into thinking something is real when it actually isn't real.
Okay, I'm
And
talking about the senses not having any role.
Well, sure, but then so then you're still susceptible. I mean, if you're brought into the world and then you have learned, you know, X amount of things up until that point, and then all of a sudden you're cut off or deprived from those things, then certainly, yeah, I think, you know, the human mind will like manufacture things as a substitute for said sensory deprivation.
So why? Why does the brain need to do that?
Well, I don't know. Frame of reference. I mean, like
What
things
kind of an explanation is that? Frame of reference.
well, because the way you navigate through your experiences, you have a frame of reference. Like I can do this, but I can't do that. And I can do this because of X, or I can do this or I can't do this because of Y, sort of thing. And you make all of those decisions based on a frame of reference. You have a frame of reference, like my proximity to the door. I have a sense of depth perception, and the frame of reference is the distance I am from the door. So I know whether I know approximately how many steps I would have to take and actually to get to the door, you know, based on a set of variables.
Yeah, but this piece of information I am citing has no frame of reference. All frames of reference have been removed.
Understood. So the mind will manufacture things in order to cope. I mean, like, you know, the inmate who is in solitary confinement is in a similar situation to what you're describing.
Mm-hmm.
And so they will withdraw, and the mind, you know, they will probably sleep, and in said sleep or state of, you know, semi-consciousness or unconsciousness, they will dream. And so sometimes they will, in their dreams, they will manufacture, you know, or they will experience things much the way they would in the human world, or in the world while they were conscious.
Okay, well, so let me confuse this a little bit more. Do you believe there's a subconscious?
I believe there's something that people call subconscious, yes. Mm-hmm. But I'm not. I mean, like, you're talking about like hidden or repressed feelings or memories or all that kind of stuff or whatever.
Well, that would be a rather tiny part of what we call the subconscious. So allow me to explain. For 7 years, I kept a dream journal. So I would daily record my dreams and look at the patterns that would form. And one of the shocking realizations was that there is a party going on inside you and you have no idea. Okay, if you don't access it by recording your dreams, you're totally unaware of this part of you that exists and operates pretty much on its own, known as the subconscious. And the person who made a big deal out of this was a gentleman named Carl Jung. So if anybody's ever read Carl Jung, everything he says about dreams and dream states and the subconscious, he is absolutely correct.
Sure.
Okay, so now when we talk about sensory deprivation, and you have this thing called the subconscious, and you have a capacity for dream states, I don't know. The story gets a little complicated.
In what sense?
Okay, well, the person who would have subjected himself to this experiment, where all his senses were shut off and was locked away in a chamber, would have been accessing what experiences were already stored in his subconscious as a part of his, quote, hallucinating.
Well, so can't we call that memory recall? So if those things were stored, I mean, because memory is a form of like but like where do those things reside? I mean, like on a hard drive, or it's like where do those things, all of those things or those experiences reside? So I'll give you for example. So I had when I was very young, when I was very, very young, probably maybe 6 or 7, maybe 5 or 6 years old, maybe even younger, 4, 5 or 6, somewhere around there. So I had a dream about a playground that I had never been to, never seen it before.
Right.
And it wasn't until maybe about 5 or 6 years later, we moved here to Greenwich, and I saw that playground here in Greenwich.
Right.
So,
yes. So that's a category, future dreams, and that gets you into a whole other thing. True.
Well, for me, I think that I guess you could say that was a premonition, because if it is true that there is no such thing as time, right, or no passage of time, and if it is true that I guess what we experience as time is nonlinear, then I think all of these attributes are things that we recall or visualize or see are maybe part of an experience that just is. And
now you did
it's the state.
Now you did it. Oh my God. Now you did it. Did you say category of experience?
Something to that effect.
Yes, category of experience. Now, how would that be different from a frame of reference?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, you said category of experience. All right. So what triggered this was discussing the future dream that you had. And I've had.
Well, you have categories of experiences.
Right. And you're suggesting that time is nonlinear, time may not even exist. And so if time doesn't exist, now you'd like to suggest instead that we need to talk about categories of experience. And then I jumped in and said, oops, I hear a frame of reference.
Okay. With juxtaposed to what?
I don't know, stream of consciousness. The flow of ideas and images in which you cannot see any apparent connection. That would be certainly lacking in a frame of reference.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, so the point I'm trying to get to here is that there is this other stuff going on inside us of which we're unaware. And let's see, I'm trying to, how do we get into this in the first place? We were talking about intelligence and divinity. And then I started to throw in consciousness and information as a part of this discussion. And then you pulled up the Wikipedia account on the difference between consciousness and intelligence. And then we went from there into, I guess I started talking about dream states, the concept of dreams. And so I'm going to say, let's call a timeout here on this, because I put up a list of things and my dear audience, I think, was expecting us to talk about those things. So let's whip through them. First, Iranian stew. That's right. The menu tonight features Iranian stew. So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know when you're going to hear about it, but eventually you will hear about more people, more Iranians being killed in the streets by the IRGC in the city of Isfahan, the third largest city in Iran, where they were going to stage yet another hanging of 3 individuals who are accused of being pro-democracy activists and therefore meriting the death penalty. And by the way, based upon passages from the Quran, these 3 were accused of working for the Jews. So Jews are for democracy, and I guess Muslims are not. Is this where they're going with this? I don't know. In any event, big turnout, a lot of angry people. They were fighting to stop the hanging. I don't know how successful they were, but the whole thing turned into a riot. And the IRGC had to start shooting at the people, or the security forces had to start shooting at the people in the street. Some of them died. Okay, so that's where that's at. And mind you, if we look back over the last month, there's been periods punctuated by various street protests. You had students out a couple of times a month or so ago. We've had other demonstrations. Now we've had this, and it all seems to be moving in a certain direction. And I just want to emphasize for everybody's edification, no, America is not doing regime change, but we just might be facilitating it. So the real problem still remains that the Iranian people, it's up to them. And things like this protest, they're trying to save the lives of these people who are going to be publicly hanged, shows that it's kind of sort of moving in that direction. Okay, so that's a case of stay tuned. Fauci is through. Tomorrow, have you listened to all the talk about his when he's going to get in front of Rand Paul tomorrow? Fauci?
Yeah, it's just going to be more tongue wagging and, bread and circus.
Well, I think he's going to be really put on the spot here. For example,
I mean, he's always put on the spot. He's been put on the spot, what, 2 or 3 times now? What's happened? Nothing.
Right.
Absolutely nothing. And I predict nothing is going to happen this time.
All right. Noted. In the meantime, he's going to have to explain the email that he sent to his counterpart, Francis. Trying to remember his last name. So this other guy, Francis, was the head of the NIH, whereas Fauci was just the head of an institute, NIAID. And in that email, Fauci had instructed Francis to destroy this information. That's a federal offense. Okay, so this will be a subject of discussion tomorrow. And that's why I put up Fauci is through.
I guess Dr. Ricky or DJ Ricky is not going to be joining us tonight, and I don't think anybody else is going to be joining us tonight.
Yeah, so c'est la vie. All right, so there is, all right, so I brought that up now. Did we talk about Natalie Winters?
No, you didn't talk about Natalie Winters.
Okay, so, but do you know who she is?
I don't. Off the top of my head.
All right. So she's an investigative journalist. She works a lot with Steve Bannon, and she has her own Substack. And she works very hard pulling up information. Maybe we could use the word dirt on the deep state. And here you go. Revealed. Here are the mainstream journalists on China's payroll. Now, mind you, there have been accusations about this for the longest time, but we have not been privy to the actual names of the people who've been taking money from communist China to brainwash us Americans. So here we go. Get ready. Whoop, whoop. Oh, there they are. Okay. I'm just going to read the names because it makes me feel good. Ezra Klein, Matthew Iglesias, Ronald Brownstein, Bradford Plumer, Marjorie Miller, Steve Clemens, David Rhodey, who is on CNN, by the way, from time to time, and MSN Now. Jonathan Alter, David Sweeney, Daniel Gross, Marilyn G. Wax, Kathleen Devaney, Tom Olmsted, Steve Chapman, Bruce Stokes, Craig Gilbert. See here, Tony Semerad, Sheikha Dalmia, Jonathan something, Christy Kemp, John Healy, and Julian Paquette. This, I need to tell you, Eric, is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many more journalists who have been involved with so many other groups, all playing the same game, working for China against America. Okay? So now we get to see the names of these traitors. They're right there. And so it's incumbent upon us, if we had the resources, to go after these mofos.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I just had to share that. Now, the thing I didn't get to put up. So I sent it to, I think I sent it to you too. Didn't you see? It was the a photograph of Mars.
Yeah. You showed me something.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, like yeah, right. There is no wow about it. Yeah, this is the problem, right? They are okay. We can say this. What was that word you used earlier? Propaganda. I think.
Sure.
Can you have visual images that serve as propaganda? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and
Yeah.
you're seeing again, like all of these other things like Bigfoot and, little green men and UFOs surfacing all over the place. I mean, to me, those are just distractions.
Mhm.
They're like, dangling carrots or whatever. Uh,
Mhm.
shiny things. They're putting shiny
We'll
things
go,
out
yes.
there.
We'll go with shiny object syndrome.
Yeah. And I think that this is, my theory. I haven't. I'm sure that there's probably enough information or evidence that's been published, or
Mhm.
even not published,
Yeah.
that would suggest that the government, as soon as Edward Bernays wrote that book, it just seemed like this country started down a very dark road of
Mhm.
propaganda. And I think that Orson Welles broadcast of the War of the Worlds, I think
Right.
that was I'm of the opinion, and I don't have any evidence, but I mean, to me, it just seems like, or it feels like, that was deliberate as sort of a template or a test bed to see how
Mhm.
people would actually respond or react.
Sure.
Albeit they did infrequently through the broadcast say that it was a dramatization, but most people, or a lot of people, didn't
Yeah.
hear that
Right. Got lost in the
aspect of it.
sauce. Yeah.
So, and then it just seemed like, and that was what, in the 1930s. And
Yeah.
so we
Right.
didn't really hear any talk about UFOs and everything. There wasn't any real emphasis on it before then, but it was from that time moving forward, you can see all of the stuff surfacing about UFOs and,
Mhm.
close
Oh,
encounters and
yeah, but
abductions and all this
yeah,
sort of thing.
yeah. I mean, Roswell has sort of been the touchstone for all of this stuff, but the problem is
Yeah,
that
but
it.
Roswell never existed before any of those things.
What do you mean? Never existed?
Didn't exist before
Huh?
the H.G. Wells or the radio broadcast in the
What?
1930s.
What are you talking about?
You
Roswell?
said Roswell,
Yes,
New
it was
Mexico.
in
You're talking about
right.
where all the black ops take place and all that sort of thing.
Black Ops. What? Where? No, wait, let's
You're
go back.
talking about like
Hit the
Area
rewind.
51,
Let's hit
all
the
that stuff.
rewind. Let's hit the rewind button. It's not about all that stuff. It's trying to establish the timeline. And Roswell happened sometime in the 1940s. I think it was 45 or 47. I'm not sure
Yes,
exactly. Okay. So I'm just saying that when you listen to the popular mainstream accounts of UFOs, they often quote, start there.
yeah,
Okay. That's all I'm saying. All
sure.
right.
That's kind of
However,
like the genesis of all that stuff.
okay, however, then you discover that as people did more research, they started to find other curious accounts that predate Roswell.
Okay, but my point. See, my point with all that is that's the catalyst for doing all of that. In other words, so
Mm-hmm.
and then
Sure.
so what they do is they try to reverse, flip it on its head and say, well, and then what they do is they make inferences from ancient writing. I mean, look, I saw the movie in Search of in the movie theaters before it became a
Mm-hmm.
television series,
Right.
and the Shroud of Turin, and then which I understand is purportedly probably authentic.
It's authentic.
Yeah,
It's authentic.
but all of the other stuff.
Yeah.
So I think in order to make something or things that are outlandish or absurd believable, you have to introduce some components there has to be some elements or components of truth within that framework there. So they have to put that stuff in there. So the other stuff that they talk about seems to be credible, like the Bigfoot thing, which I think was debunked. The guy walking in the woods with the suit on or whatever it was, and was filmed in the woods or whatever. I mean, it's clearly a man. It's clearly a man in a suit. I mean, it was.
Yeah. Well, if you talk to people who live on some of these islands, like in Alaska and stuff, not so unreal.
Well, I mean, well, you know, again, you're probably going to roll your eyes in the back of your head, but I'm just going to say that people that live out in the wilderness or remote areas tend to see things, and I would say that people are more susceptible to.
And they don't see things too.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that their imaginations can get the better of them, and maybe they think they see something, and they're going to say that's what it is, but it's not really that. It could be something else, and there's an explanation for it.
It's what they also hear, not just what they see.
Right. But with it, and I again go back to the idea we have millions upon millions upon millions of data recording devices, cell phones, cameras, and so forth. And, you know, as a photographer, I always look for things that are unusual, you know, or I always look for things that like stand out to me. So I'm always scanning and the landscape and everything for things that look peculiar, unusual, or interesting to me. And, you know, in my probably like almost 50 years of taking pictures, I've never seen anything or experienced anything that I would say I can't really explain, except maybe one thing, which I think has a plausible explanation. My mother and I were down at Fisherman's Wharf on Steamboat Road, and we saw this streak across the sky, and it left these like plumes or these like donut holes or whatever. I mean, it was like it just came and went, and it was the fastest damn thing. I'd never seen anything like that before, ever. And so later on in later years, the explanation for that was, I think it's scramjet technology. My father, in the conversations I had later with my father, who was in the Navy, he would talk to me about the technologies that they were developing back, you know, at the end of World War II and during the Korean War. They had drones that would fly off of ships, and they could control them remotely from the ship and pilot them anywhere they needed to go.
Right.
And so
old news. Yep.
So this technology has been around for a long, long, long time. And so little green men, no. U.S. experimenting with new technologies, or governments or agencies or whatever experimenting with new technologies, absolutely.
Okay. Well, the Mars pictures are a growing problem set. In other words, we have those things out there capturing more and more images, and there is a subset that other people are looking at and saying, wait a second, that looks weird. That looks like the entrance to a cave. That looks like some kind of object made by somebody. That looks like something from a temple.
Right. So you ever, yeah, I'm looking at that image that you sent in the email. You know, it looks like a rock to me. It looks like a rock formation, the way the light's hitting it, which is like, I guess from like, actually, no, it's probably more from that side, the way the shadow's being cast. But that looks like a rock formation to me.
Yeah, it's rather highly detailed for a rock formation. I think that's the problem.
Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, like what wind or
all right, so
things can do.
So here's the dealio. All right.
What is that? Devil's Tower? Have you ever seen that?
Sure. Remember
Yeah.
from Close Encounters. But anyway, so the thing with this image is let's just assume for the moment that it's a JPG, and you could convert it to a scalable vector image. Yes, no?
Yeah.
Okay. So once you've done that, now you blow it up, get a closer look at the details.
I'm looking at a pretty decent rendering of this, and I don't know what is the distance of the camera to said object.
No idea.
You know,
No idea.
well, that has to be answered as well. Like I don't have any. I guess the frame.
Right, that's right. Frame of reference.
The only frame of reference that I have are all of the other rocks, but I don't know how big are those rocks. You know, is that something that's buried? It looks like one of these like ledge, which is like angled into the.
This is unfair to the audience. Let me just see if I can find this, okay? So that they can get just take a second here, audience. Bear with me. Oh, darn it. Here. Let's do it. Let's do it. Oh, no, come on. What's the matter with you? Oh,
so, but the problem that I have with like stuff like this is it just winds up being conjecture, It's like fraught with conjecture. It's like we can conjecture, well, that looks like a man-made object. Does it? I don't know that it does. I mean, to me, it looks like
man-made, but it looks like, intelligent design.
It looks just like a piece of ledge sticking out of the ground.
Well, it's not sitting on the ground. I wouldn't say it's sticking out of the ground.
No, it looks like there's the way that it's angled, because I'm looking at these lines and these ridges along this thing here, and it looks like it's just a piece of ledge stuck in the ground and part of it sticking out. It looks like part of a much larger piece of rock or boulder or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to get. We'll have to do it on another night. I have to get my stuff lined up.
Well, I mean, if I were able to screen share from here, but I think you got to give me permission to do that.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. So you go into the settings or whatever.
All right. Well, let's have a look. Where'd you go? There it is. Settings right there. All right.
And I think you click on my window, allow to screen share, allow to do this or whatever.
It doesn't have this settings. It's general, camera, audio, visual effects.
Can you click on my AV window? And there are a set of buttons on my AV window in the the studio. Yeah, the AV window is this thing here.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, let's see. It's not. Darn it! It's for some reason that's weird. Oh wait, no.
Yeah, usually there's like a set of buttons up here or up here. Or down here.
Right. Now it has your name, remove from stage, mute, and edit mic settings is all it gives me.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It's not OBS.
Or how about present?
Present.
Does it? I'm gonna take a crack at this. Hold on a second.
Okay. Yeah. So you guys are being very patient, staying with us if we can pull this up, but we can also do it tomorrow night. That's another possibility. If you haven't seen it yet.
Desktop. Yeah, there it is. Open.
Okay. Oh God. Yeah, let's see here.
Okay, so it's in the studio. If you went into the studio, can you see the image that I uploaded into the studio?
Well, I'm in the studio now. Okay, so let's see here. New layout. What's that? In the studio. I'm going back here again. So
what's really cool about iVisit, which is an AV program from like 25 years ago. I could drag and drop this image over my AV window, and it would actually show the image.
Yeah, what the hell, right? I mean, this is old technology, but for some reason they've stripped it out.
Image file. Let me try it. Hold on. Let me do this. Nope.
No.
Huh. Weird. Okay. What if I do... Okay, camera visual. Okay. It's not going to let me do It's not
Yeah.
gonna let me present.
All right,
And
well-
it might be because if you're on the free thing, you might be limited.
I'm not on the free thing. I paid full freight for this.
Okay.
So-
Then I guess your guest should be allowed to present, but
Yeah, we're going to have to do this offline, do some homework on it.
right. Okay. Well, have a good night, everybody.
All right. Nighty night. Thank you for sticking around, and hope you got something out of it. And we